perform to such a big audience is both an opportunity of a lifetime and the scariest thing in the world. So, could we give them another huge round of applause, please? Thank you also to Pepe for the introduction, and we look forward to hearing more tomorrow in your General Secretary's address. But today it is my responsibility to open this conference in a manner which I hope will reflect our shared experience and hopes as school and college leaders. I have to admit, it is pretty daunting standing up in front of so many of my peers. And it isn't helped by the fact that today is none other than Friday the 13th. I am inspired by the fact that in America, they are today celebrating an occasion aimed at debunking such superstitions. It's called National Open an Umbrella Indoors Day. Now, as a scientist, I love that notion. It helps to remind me that our fate is in our own hands, which is, in many ways, the message of what follows. Incidentally, I also discovered that Americans today celebrate National Earmuff Day. Now, I'm not sure what lesson to draw from that, other than the fact that somewhere in the world, there's an occasion for everything. In any event, here goes. First, let me say that it is an honour and a privilege to stand before you as President and have the opportunity to speak to so many fellow members today. As I stand here, I reflect on where I have come from. I grew up in Walsall in the West Midlands, a region defined by its industrial history as the Black Country. That is because the soot and smoke billowing from the factory chimneys back in the day turned everything black. Buildings, the washing hung out on lines, everything turned black. If you've ever watched the television series Peaky Blinders, you'll have seen images of ash falling from the sky, almost like snow. That is pretty much the environment my parents grew up in. It was a working-class community where people left education at the earliest opportunity to work in the local factory and help support their household financially. This meant that none of our parents had any academic qualifications, nor any real experience of the education system. When I was growing up there in the 1970s and 80s, unemployment was high and rising. None of my friends really expected much from school, and many of them voted with their feet, often truanting for weeks at a time with nobody appearing to check up on them. Others left school altogether at the earliest opportunity, either through teenage pregnancy or because their 16th birthday fell before the 31st of January, and they were therefore allowed to leave at Easter before sitting any exams. Incredibly, this option to leave at Easter remained legal until 1997, 2 years after I began teaching. When I think about this in respect of safeguarding alone, it sends a shiver down my spine, let alone the missed opportunities for so many of my peers. It was a story of bright children who were trapped in a cycle of low expectations and underachievement, which continued through the generations. Thankfully, things are very different now. Transformation has been brought about by people like you, the people who lead our schools and colleges, who refuse to accept that destinies are set in stone, who believe in the power of education to change lives and to build a better, fairer society. What I remember from my personal experience is how this was exemplified by my own teachers. Whether it was Mr. Baker, who inspired me to become a chemistry teacher, or Mr. Brown, the deputy head, who was always out and about in the school making time to listen to us. There were always adults around me in school that motivated and encouraged. They never gave up on us, no matter how fruitless it may have sometimes seemed. Instead, through commitment and hard work, they showed that they believed in our ability to step into a world which was very different from the one in which our parents grew up. Going on to sit A-levels and move away from home to go to university was absolutely life-changing for me. Being able to enter adulthood with decent qualifications, general knowledge and the skills for a graduate profession was unimaginable just one generation before me. And I still pinch myself when I think about it. We live in very different times today. Our society has undergone huge economic, social and technological changes. And an enormous amount of progress has been made over the past 30 years in raising educational standards and supporting children. But despite all that progress, there are still many children out there who are much like that childhood version of me, where chaotic lives and complex social problems make it difficult to focus on school, and where learning does not seem a priority, where families sometimes see no value in education because they are so ground down by the poverty and lack of opportunities in their communities. And these children need the modern-day equivalent of Mr. Baker and Mr. Brown, the teachers who lifted my horizons, teachers who inspire and support them, teachers who believe in them. And that responsibility is, of course, our responsibility. It is the mission which gets us up in the morning, no matter the challenges. It is the core belief that drives us on and which informs everything we do. In my role as president, I'm often asked about my proudest moment as a school leader. Well, I can tell you what it wasn't. It wasn't the hours I spent developing a new diploma curriculum, only to see it never actually implemented in our area due to a change in government. Or the time I had to set up a COVID testing centre overnight after a Downing Street briefing the previous evening, which triggered an avalanche of calls from worried parents. Oh yes, the pandemic. I recall desperately looking for some sort of positive amidst the chaos. This, I thought, is a really good opportunity to teach children about germ theory, how disease spreads, why mass vaccinations are important, and how all those graphs in the government briefings will come in really handy as teaching resources. But what I'm actually proud of is something else entirely, and it will stay with me long after I've retired. It is when a child I've taught and supported feels safer, happier, and more fulfilled because of the impact I have been able to have on their life. I recently sorted through some old school paperwork and I came across a note from a student called Maisie who was in one of my classes during the pandemic. In that note, Maisie says how she felt safe and looked after in my lessons, how she knows that she matters to me. That is special, and I am sure you all have similar examples from your own careers. It is why teaching is such an incredible career choice and why school and college leadership plays such a vital role in our education system. Which brings me on to the theme of this conference, Forward Together. It reflects the fact that we have come a long way as an education system. Great schools, great colleges, high standards, all driven by a deeply ingrained moral purpose to do the very best we can for every child and young person. But there is still work to be done. We have in our education system and in our society a persistent gap between the haves and the have-nots, with children from disadvantaged communities and those with special educational needs frequently falling into the latter category. Raising their horizons, as mine were raised, is the key to taking our education system to the next level, and in turn creating a country which is both fair and thriving. But this cannot be achieved by schools and colleges alone. It must be a joint project with all partners in education, particularly policymakers and parents, working alongside educators in common cause. All too often, we have seen how education policy, which is poorly thought through, becomes yet another burden, and how a minority of parents with unreasonable expectations and short tempers are a drain on time, energy and resources. These pressures are leading to an exodus from the profession. Schools and colleges are asked to do ever more with ever less, all while managing inappropriate complaints and behaviour from some families. We see colleagues, often seasoned professionals with many years of experience, simply buckling under the strain. There is a welfare crisis in our schools and colleges, and this is simply not sustainable. In all the reams of education policy pouring out of Westminster, this is an area which is scandalously overlooked and ignored. And yet it is the key to everything. We cannot raise standards to the next level, or improve the fortunes of the forgotten third, or reduce the nearly 1 million young people who are not in education, employment or training, if the education workforce is broken on the wheel of too many expectations and not enough support. Of all the statistics which poured out of the education sector last year, there is one that should be ringing the loudest of alarm bells. It was a survey from the Education Support Charity, which found that more than a third of education staff are at risk of probable clinical depression. We cannot go on like this. It is simply not acceptable. Pepe will talk about this more tomorrow, but I can tell you that the caseload being managed by ASCL's member support services has never been higher, and the calls to our hotline never more desperate. So I would make this appeal to the government, and I say this with the Secretary of State due to appear on this stage later this morning. Work with ASCL to improve the well-being of the education workforce, recognising that this is the vital resource upon which all policies and aspirations rely. Dial down the volume of policy announcements, particularly the ones that come out of the blue via press releases, and sense check them against the capacity of schools and colleges in terms of money and staffing, so that we are actually able to deliver those expectations. Work with us also on a national campaign to talk to parents about the importance of supporting their schools and colleges, the importance of their children following the rules for the benefit of all students. And if they are unhappy about something, the importance of making complaints in a polite and reasonable manner. As I say, most parents know this already, and they work very productively with their schools and colleges. But some parents are clearly struggling to deal with the pressures in their own lives, and their behaviour is very challenging. The huge amount of work and stress they generate detracts from other children, undermines behaviour policies, and contributes to the pressures which drive people out of teaching. At ASCL, we really do support much of what the government is doing. We commend the rollout of a new wave of family hubs. the value placed on further education in boosting priority skills vital to the economy, steps being taken to tackle the appalling rate of child poverty in this country, the huge extension of childcare support which is taking place, the efforts to reform a SEND system which just is not coping with the levels of need. And they do listen. But for all the good work that the government is doing, and this is the major caveat, everything relies in the end on schools and colleges having the funding necessary to deliver all those expectations placed upon them. And that is simply not the current reality. Many of our schools and colleges are running on a mixture of goodwill and fumes. And instead of adequate funding and resources, we instead see Ofsted increasingly used as the lever to force schools and colleges, which are already at breaking point, to do even more. And the outcome is predictable. And this bears repeating. More than a third of education staff are at risk of probable clinical depression. This brings us on to the question of recruitment and retention. For many years, we've lived with huge gaps in the education workforce. In short, we don't recruit enough trainee teachers into the profession, and then we lose far too many early in their careers. The result is that many of us struggle to recruit subject specialists, and it is often schools serving disadvantaged communities which struggle the most. Part of our aim in this year's conference is to promote teaching as the brilliant, fulfilling career that we know it can be. This is something that is rooted in our experience of working in schools, the joy that comes from working with children, those unique and sometimes bizarre conversations that only young people can instigate and which make every day special and different. We can and we must tell that story at every opportunity. But there is also no doubt that we need system-level change which addresses the barriers to people becoming teachers. I have spoken today about the well-being crisis which is affecting the profession. Closely connected to this is the issue of excessive workloads. We have talked about this for years, but it never seems to get any better. This is particularly the case with those in leadership positions, where the days and weeks often never seem to end. All of us who go into leadership do so with our eyes open. We know it's a tough gig, and we accept that there is always a lot to do. But there is a point at which it just isn't humanly possible to keep on taking on more and more tasks. And many leaders are at that point. This isn't good for them, and it isn't good for the education system. So it is beyond time to act on workloads. And once again, I appeal to the government to work with us to deliver meaningful change, not just a few tweaks here and there, but a fresh approach to what we expect from schools and colleges and how we resource them. And can I make a special plea that the answer which is offered is not AI? Yes, I am sure that AI can do all sorts of amazing things, but it is not a magic wand which is going to solve all of our problems. We'll continue to have real children in our schools and colleges who will need to be taught by real teachers. I have spoken a lot today about what we need from policymakers and stakeholders in our system. But let me finish by saying what they can expect from us as leaders. Throughout the past few months, I have travelled the UK, meeting colleagues in all parts of our great nation. And I have been struck time and again by positivity, warmth, and the dedication that I see. These are people, you are people, who are totally dedicated to your pupils and students. who are practical, solution-focused, and who think deeply about education and pedagogy. I see a profession who chooses optimism despite all the challenges that we face, and which I have outlined today. This is what policymakers can expect from us. A group of professionals who are fully committed to our education system and work tirelessly for our children and young people. I am very conscious that ASCL presidents have addressed conferences down the years and that they have made some of the same points that I have made. It may be tempting to think that nothing ever changes and we just go round and round the same circles. But I think things can and do change. I'll take this opportunity to remind you of a time when we had a US president who was, now how do I put this politely, slightly less surreal and certainly less worrying than the current incumbent. Back in 2012, Barack Obama said, "Change is never easy. Change doesn't happen overnight. Change is hard, especially when you're dealing with challenges that have been building up over decades. But if everyone maintains their determination, their sense of purpose, the bonds that we have with each other, then there's no challenge we can't overcome." This, in essence, is what I mean by forward together. As I have said, the present government has already done some very good things. And what they say about breaking down the barriers to opportunity for every child is spot on. It is the driving mission which gets us up in the morning and keeps us coming back for more. The absolute conviction that every child deserves the best opportunities that we can possibly give them. We all agree with those sentiments. Let's now work with policymakers and parents to ensure that these become more than sound bites, that change for the better really does take place. Let's indeed go forward together. I am delighted to have had the chance to speak to you today. It has been an absolute moment of pleasure that I will always treasure. Have a great conference and thank you for listening.
No, wait there, Joe. Milk it, Joe, milk it. Thank you very much, Dr. Joe Riley. I promised you passion, and I promised you authenticity. I think you got those in bucketfuls. It's a great way to start our morning. I'll now hand over to Manny Botway.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Manny Botway. I am the immediate past president of ASCL. I'm also head teacher of Tiverton School in Macclesfield. It's my privilege to welcome our second keynote speaker to conference. It's in fact his third time addressing conference, Sir Martin Oliver. Sir Martin started as HMCI in January 2024, having previously been the Chief Executive for Outward Grange Academies Trust. Please give a warm welcome to Sir Martin Oliver.
Well, thank you, Manny, and good morning, everyone. When I spoke to you last spring, we were consulting on our proposed changes to education inspection. We were talking through our ideas for report cards and grading. And I want to start off by thanking everyone who took the time to provide constructive feedback, which helped to shape and improve our toolkits. And I especially want to thank those of you who offered your schools for trial visits or who volunteered for early inspection under the renewed framework, including Manny. It is a mark of your professionalism and your dedication to delivering high standards that you took the time to engage with this and support this transformative work. So thank you. Now, as I reflect on the past 12 months, I can see what a long way we've come. And speaking personally, I reflect on the fact that I've spent an awful lot of time talking about the detail, about how we do things, the mechanics of how the toolkits work, the consistency processes, the built into how we do our work, and the determination to make inspection feel done with rather than done to. That's the how we do inspection. But standing here this morning in front of people who have dedicated their careers to education, I don't really want to talk about the how. I've done enough of that. I want to talk about the why. I want to reflect on the priorities I set for Ofsted and be honest with you about why now is the right time for our profession to set its sights higher than ever. Our purpose, like yours, is serving children and their parents and carers, doing right by them and doing right by the communities we all work in. It must be our North Star. Every decision we make, every grade we award, and every conversation we have is in their service. Ofsted, the title, is an acronym. We are the Office for Standards in Education, Children's Services and Skills. And our aim is always to raise standards and improve lives. But that improvement work comes from you and your work. It comes from your dedicated staff, perhaps also from your trusts and partnerships. And sometimes it comes from the intervention or investment from government. But it begins often with an inspection, an honest assessment of strengths and areas for improvement that's always focused on the needs of pupils. The why of our work is there in that honest assessment. We want our inspections to recognise the great work that you do, but also be the catalyst for positive change. Now, 2 years ago at this very conference, I set out 2 big priorities for my tenure as Chief Inspector in support of that positive change. At the time, those of you here, you'll remember, we were launching the Big Listen to hear about how we should improve our work, and lots of focus, rightly, was on the mechanics of inspection, the how. But I set out those 2 priorities to look beyond the important and necessary changes to how we work, to look beyond the how and towards the why it happens and why it matters. The first priority was to ensure that understanding and appreciating context sits at the heart of what we do, because inspection is more than an assessment of data. It cannot be useful if it is a simple, cold aggregation of information. The power of inspection and its usefulness to parents, politicians and professionals is its contextualised assessment of school performance across a sweep of areas. The validity of our assessment is intimately tied to that appreciation of context and the rich detail of assessments that are now contained within our report cards. It's central to the why of Ofsted's work. My second priority was to always focus on the most disadvantaged and vulnerable children. I know for many, if not most of the people in this hall, serving those children is the reason you became a teacher, the reason you became a leader, and the reason that you work in the communities that you serve. It's the why of your career. It was the why of my career. And that is why I am so proud that our inspections now highlight up and down the country that we see that teachers, leaders like you, making a real difference for disadvantaged pupils. Day in and day out, all different types of schools. Teachers taking the time to explain a complex piece of mathematics to the student who really needs it. Pushing a class just that little bit further in their thinking. Making interventions at the right time, in the right way. Good, solid, committed work backed by the very best of intentions. We see it, we value it, and we rightly recognise it. It is in this work that those 2 big priorities interact so importantly, recognising context while championing the outcomes of the most disadvantaged and vulnerable. That's why inclusion is rightly and proudly at the heart of Ofsted's work. Our report card, with its recognition of areas of strength, its presentation of contextual data, and its greater precision in identifying areas for improvement, allows for a fair presentation of a school's work. But equally, and I know this has been challenging for some, the report card does not mask issues beneath a blunt overall grade. And this is as true for the outcomes of disadvantaged and vulnerable children as any other area. Now, we see thousands of schools working in challenging contexts, booking the odds again and again to give children a life-changing education. But we sometimes see disadvantaged and vulnerable children who are not making the strides that we all think they should. Some would have this be a dilemma for Ofsted. They would argue that we should recognise the work and the effort and downplay disappointing outcomes. But this is no dilemma. Of course we will recognise the work, celebrate where that school is doing really well and identify the contextual challenges being faced. But we can never downplay the disappointing outcomes. We will never acquiesce to the quiet curse of low expectations that would see Ofsted prioritise context over outcomes for the most disadvantaged and vulnerable children. That's not why I became a teacher, a leader, and the chief inspector. And I don't believe it's why you joined our great profession either. But I recognise where this pernicious, even if well-intentioned, thread of thinking comes from. People point out that the achievement grade is intertwined with outcomes data, and that therefore those working in difficult circumstances are at a disadvantage. It is true that I believe that outcomes matter, and it's true that I will not expect less because of geography or socioeconomic status. But it is not true that we ignore context entirely and automatically grade 49% of schools needs attention for achievement. Neither do we ignore the outcomes children achieve. Children don't take good intentions into their next phase of education. They take exam grades, reading proficiency, and importantly, the character that you imbue in them. We can never and will never ignore these outcomes. But we do know it is harder for schools working in challenging communities. I know because I spent most, actually all of my career working in those communities. Those who would lower the bar are right, that Ofsted must appreciate the context in which schools are working. We must consider starting points, and we must recognise where great work is taking place. Their misplaced desire for Ofsted to lower the bar, though, stems from a deep empathy with the professionals working in those most challenging contexts. But that lowering of the bar masks an ultimately damaging belief that some children just won't get there. And I don't believe that we can ever afford to accept that. So when I am challenged that schools with weaker outcomes are more likely to see their achievement grade below the expected standard, I say, yes. Would you have it any other way? Would you have Ofsted pretend that everything is fine when children aren't achieving as they should? Of course you wouldn't. Because when we expect less of certain children, whether because of where they live, what they need, or what's happening at home, what we are telling them is, we expect less of you. Society expects less of you. So, my commitment to you is this. I will make sure that our report cards recognise where schools deliver against the odds. I will ensure context is seen as a core part of the assessment. And I make this commitment as someone who ran schools where well over half of the children were eligible for free school meals. I know raising standards is hard, relentlessly focusing on what is not working well, turning unacceptable standards into good standards, then pushing from good to great. And as the great leaders you in this room will know, achievement can be the last thing to change, the culmination of all the effort to make a difference. But we will never succumb to the quiet curse of low expectations. In this, we are emulating the best of you, the great leaders in this room. That brings me to what I mentioned before about making the most of our insights. Because when we gather the evidence that help is needed in certain areas, we can push for change. We can say, and will say to government, there is good leadership here, good things are happening, but achievement, for example, in this borough, in this town, this region, is not where it needs to be. How are you going to change that? We can connect the dots also between the poor access to childcare in a certain area and the effect that this has locally on school readiness. We can see areas where there are lots of young people not in education, employment or training, and push for stronger further education that gives them a pathway into work. We will make the case to government that these children, these communities and these schools need targeted support to raise standards, not just good intentions and hard work from teachers. It's not right that a postcode should set the ceiling for a child's ambitions, and equally, it is not right that the professionals working, striving in those postcodes should be left without the resources, the support and the help that they need, including the support that reaches well beyond the school gates. We are coming from a place where previously more than 90% of schools were previously judged good or outstanding at their most recent inspection. That suggested that less than 10% of schools in the country need any improvement. But our job is to point out where expectations can and should be raised. The new report cards do this. Take the needs attention grade. We are seeing more schools receive this grade than the old requires improvement because we are raising standards. We are being more exacting, and I make no apologies for that. I am proud that we, you, as a school system, have raised standards in this country over recent decades. Children here are realising some of the best results in the world, from primary reading to secondary mathematics. You did that. We did that. The hard work of great people in this room. And it is because of the progress that we have made that Ofsted can raise expectations higher still. So we use the needs attention grade to flag an issue before it becomes a serious problem. It's not a fail. It's a chance for you to work on areas for improvement, to seek help and to intervene before children's outcomes are affected. For your astute, reflective leaders, you, the things we grade as needing attention, I'm sure they shouldn't be, they won't be a surprise. I want to be sure that leaders know their schools and are identifying accurately where their attention should be. And the expected standard in the middle of the scale, the starting point for inspection, means we don't have concerns. It means you're doing right by the children in your care. All of them. So far, we are seeing a spread of grades. There are schools with areas that need improvement that we expect them to address. Most are doing some areas of practice that are exceptionally, most are doing well, with some areas of practice that are doing exceptionally well. But in the days of 9 in 10 schools being told by Ofsted that there are no issues to address at all are well behind us. We are a stronger school system and we must embrace the higher expectations that come with that progress. To those of you in this room, and I know some of you out there, who have received the exceptional grades, be open about your practice. Share what you are doing. Building a self-improving system depends on good work being talked about, not gate-kept. That self-improving system is a core part of my vision, a system where everyone is pulling in the same direction to get better outcomes for children. That is why we have been piloting a new way of bringing more serving practitioners into the inspectorate and engaging with them. Our inspections already benefit from the blend of our His Majesty's inspectors, HMIs, expertise, and the real-time sector knowledge of our Ofsted inspectors, many of you, or OIs. And this pilot that I just mentioned allows us to build on that blend with more two-way reflection and shared insight that shapes inspection at all levels. Most OIs currently, they join Ofsted as individuals. Outside of inspections, their contact with one another is limited. The time and engagement they get to link with inspectors can depend on inspection schedules. And this has worked well, but it can also limit the opportunities for sharing learning having professional reflection that goes two ways. So in our pilot, OIs join Ofsted not as individuals, but as groups of professionals drawn from the networks they are already a part of. That might be multi-academy trusts, local authorities, dioceses, local school networks, independent learning providers, and general further education colleges. OIs come in now as groups, and they form a professional community with each other, and also with a senior HMI, an HMI, and regulatory RI colleagues. They share feedback and they reflect together on what they're seeing and learning. Their experiences then feed into how we continuously improve inspection as a whole. And I want to be really clear that the new OIs in the pilot are trained to the exact same high standards as our existing OIs, and they carry exactly the same inspection work alongside them. The difference is not the role, it is the route into the role, and the opportunities for structured professional engagement. It means we can bring in current sector insight in a more systemic way. It means more people in the sector inspecting in the sector. Even more colleagues who understand what it means to lead a school through challenges to make the difficult calls that you all make every single day being on your inspection team. The first participants began their inspector training in that pilot in January this year, and they're now taking part in shadow inspections this week. And we are beginning to sign them off to inspect later this term. We know there are thousands on our books who want to be inspectors, and I want to bring in as many people as possible from the sector. It is a chance for you to give back to the system, shape how inspection works, to carry your unique expertise and insight into schools and providers across the country. I believe this should be part of every leader's journey. So join us. When I started in this job, I wanted to make inspection more collaborative than ever before. We should work together to challenge each other in the interests of children and learners and to keep raising standards. We must accurately diagnose together what every child, every school, every region needs to help reach its potential. It's how all of us create a system where every child is able to achieve, belong, and thrive. And yes, Pepe, I believe in that, to use your phrase from the conference. A system that improves life chances and opens doors for all children in all communities and in all corners of the country. That is our vision, that is our mission, and I want to thank every single one of you for taking part in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sir Martin Oliver, for the address. This morning, I mean, my school's in the inspection window, so my Sarah Governor said to me, don't say anything that's going to get us in trouble. So I'm on my best behaviour. But what I want to do, what I do want to say is, on behalf of the young people and the families of this country, I want to say a huge, huge thank you to the profession. What I see when in my privileged position when I'm able to visit schools, I see school leaders and teachers and staff who are working in really, really tough environments. The cost of living, complaint culture, the challenges of social media. And irrespective of accountability and inspection framework, we must always remember the great work and the important work that we do. And I know that there will be people who will giggle because I always mention this quote when I talk, this idea of providing hope. As the great Desmond Tutu said, hope is the ability to find the light where there is darkness. There is much about the system that we can be upset about, but there is a great deal of light that I see in this room. So a huge, huge thank you. Thank you to Sir Martin Oliver. Thank you.
Conference. I actually had my inspection 2 weeks ago, but I'm still going to be good. So, welcome. I'm Guilford Badisha, current Vice President for our school, and I'm Deputy Head at Crofton School in sunny Hampshire. Probably not so sunny today, but generally very sunny. And it's my great pleasure today to introduce our next speaker, Secretary of State for Education. Bridget has been MP for Houghton and Sunderland South since May 2010 and was appointed Secretary of State for Education and Minister for Women and Equalities in 2024. I would like, we have a close association with Bridget. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Bridget Phillipson, Secretary of State for Education, and invite her to take the stage for this morning's conference.
So much, thank you. Hello, good morning everyone. It is great to be back here with you, and it's been quite the year since we last met. A year in which I've spent a lot of time in your schools and colleges, seeing your wonderful staff, speaking to you and listening to you about all the work that you're doing. And I've been speaking to parents and carers too, grandparents, uncles and aunties, nursery teachers, children's social care workers, speech and language professionals. I've met with my fellow members of Parliament, local leaders, the Chancellor, the Prime Minister, and do you know what we've all been talking about? Children, childhood, young people and opportunity. Because, ladies and gentlemen, education is back at the forefront of national life. The nation is talking about our schools, and that debate is certainly heated. You don't need to trust me on that. But why wouldn't it be? At stake is not only the future of our schools, but the future of our country too. Because to build a better Britain, first we must look to our schools and colleges. First we must look to you, our leaders in education. That is your great power and your great responsibility. And Joe, this morning you spoke about the importance of your colleagues who lead our schools and colleges, who refuse to accept that destinies are set in stone, who believe in the power of education to change lives and to build a fairer, better society. I believe it too. For shaping young lives, there is no job more important, no task more urgent. Last month I went to a school in Peterborough to launch our new school's white paper. After a wonderful singing performance from the students, and in front of education staff and campaigners from across the country, I set out this government's vision for schools. But colleagues, this was not a white paper written alone. It's the result of those conversations, the insights, ideas, expertise, lived experience of countless children and young people, professionals and parents too. We've written a white paper in partnership, and now we must deliver it in partnership. And Pepe, I want to thank you and all of your members for your help on this white paper. You've been an invaluable source of support and scrutiny. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so very much. But we can't stop now. We must continue with that spirit of collaboration in the months and years to come, to seize this once-in-a-generation opportunity to deliver opportunity for every child. Forward together. Now really is the time. We all know that childhood is changing beyond all recognition. And a little girl growing up in the last decade had just so much to contend with. Her support was stripped away, and you've seen the impact down the line in your classrooms. The Sure Start Centre round the corner, that closed long ago, so her parents couldn't get the right advice during her early years. And if there wasn't space at the local nursery, then she didn't get the early support for learning. She reaches school already behind, on numbers and letters, but maybe also in other ways too. Still in nappies perhaps, unable to hold a knife and fork possibly. She moves through primary in the teeth of a cost of living crisis. Her parents work all the hours God sends, but small disasters, they knock them back. The boiler packs up, the car breaks down. So sometimes the family budget doesn't stretch far enough, and she arrives in the classroom with no breakfast in her tummy, unable to concentrate on her times tables that morning. And then our child, she reaches her teenage years with a smartphone in her pocket, a source of tremendous information and connection, but disinformation too. Disconnection from her local community, sports teams, youth centres, distraction and disruption in your lessons. And for her, the constant buzz of comparison and competition, the slide towards an always online, ultra-globalised childhood, swarming with the dark voices of online hate. I know that schools, teachers, parents and carers worry about social media. We worry about the impact on our children's education, their learning, focus, their sleep and mental health. There are opportunities to seize with technology, but we must get the balance right. So this government has launched a consultation on children's digital wellbeing, and the Prime Minister has already announced new legal powers so that we can act on the findings immediately. So I urge you to respond, because this girl and her friends need our support and guidance now more than ever. Has any generation had to fight so hard for a slice of certainty, a clear path forward? But the fight has made her more compassionate, more tolerant, more enterprising. But she can feel her sense of community falling, her worries rising. She struggled on, helped by heroic school staff. She starts to think about what comes next. But she finds that the same tech that keeps her glued to her phone has now taken away the good entry-level jobs too. I tell you about this child who has no name but could be one of any of the hundreds in your schools. I tell you about her not to wallow in doom and gloom. Never. The tenacity and invention of this generation, it gives me so much hope. Rather, it's to show you why we need change and why that change must be broad. Because the headwinds she faces, so many of them blow in from outside your school. So we are doing what only the state can do. We're previous holders of this office, of the very, very best job in government. Where they kept their focus narrow, they looked the other way. We are changing the weather for that girl, for her generation and for generations to come. No school is an island and no government should treat you as such, not anymore. We're stepping up and rebuilding the services around you. That girl growing up now under this Labour government, her parents can go to their local Best Start family hub to get the right parenting support. She can go to a nursery at the end of her road for 30 hours of government-funded childcare a week. She gets early speech and language support too. So now when she reaches school, there's no need to catch up. Free breakfast clubs, free school meals, ending the 2-child limit. Child poverty builds up barriers to learning, but together we are pulling them down. Fighting child poverty is the moral mission of this government. And delivering the largest ever reduction in child poverty in a single parliament will be one of our proudest achievements. Investment in children and in their futures. So that girl is finally able to give it her all in your lessons because she's no longer coming to school unsettled or unhappy or unfed. All the while, the focus in the classroom returns to teaching and learning. That is where your true power lies. Not a food bank, not social services, teaching and learning. And I'm backing school leaders. And when young people leave school, I'm backing college leaders to give them further along their path to opportunity. New V levels to sit alongside A levels and T levels, supporting you to grow into new technical excellence colleges, and recognising the importance of your staff, working with you to develop a career-long pathway of professional development, because your development as professionals is the engine of opportunity for our young people. But rebuilding the foundations of childhood support is not enough. There may have been a time when public services could work well in isolation, when childcare, healthcare, nurseries, primary, secondaries, colleges could keep themselves to themselves and still provide a decent service. But the world has moved on. The complexity of modern childhood demands a system of support that is joined up, no gaps to fall into. Colleagues, the changes that you have seen in your classrooms over the past decade, the poverty, the additional need, the technology, this is a new era of childhood and it calls for a new era of education. An end to policy in parts. Instead, a village around the child, every child, with schools as the beating heart of that support. And yes, it's about every child, but it's also about the next chapter in our country's story. Because if we have every young person leaving education ready to contribute to the economy, to society, to the world that awaits them, it's the whole country that reaps the rewards. This, in the purest sense, is in our national interest. So our reforms begin today, but they take us into the 2030s and beyond. Our schools are at the centre of a strong and confident nation, a modern Britain with opportunity for all. And that means in every classroom, high standards and inclusion, working as one, each strengthening the other. Schools filled with the sounds of sport, music and drama, collaborative to their core. Colleagues, I am ambitious for every child. And I mean every child. I mean that girl we talked about before, who might come from a low-income home, but who has just as much right to academic excellence as any other child. She is yet to benefit from the high standards that exist in some schools, and she remains the symbol of a disadvantage gap that is still far too wide. And the boy who lives 2 doors down, who has special educational needs, he's had to get in a taxi every morning, off to a school far away to have his needs met. He doesn't know that girl from his street, nor the other kids in his neighbourhood, because he doesn't go to school with any of them. During the weekends and at holidays, he has no local friends to play with. Even this faraway support that his parents have had to fight tooth and nail for. And yet still, he achieves far below what we know he is capable of, just like that girl on his street. But the futures of those two young neighbours are intertwined, because we can't bring down the attainment gap without reforming the SEND system. The boundaries of disadvantage are just too blurry. Achievement can't just be for some, it has to be for all. And colleagues, this is a generational challenge that I'm asking you to rise to. But the solutions already exist. To take these children from sidelined to included, to upgrade their school days from narrow to broad, to see them no longer withdrawn but engaging. It's about spreading what already works, because there are stories of success for children who don't fit the conventional mould. I've spoken about them time and again. Winyates Primary in Peterborough, Tanfield School in County Durham, Chantry Academy in Ipswich, Morpeth School in Tower Hamlets. The excellence in some of our schools, for some of our children, that was the basis for my vision for all of our schools and for all of our children. And now, with this white paper, the time has come to deliver that vision. From high standards here and there, to high standards everywhere. That is the heart and soul of our white paper. Policies not conjured from the Whitehall sky, but powered by what is already working across our country that you deliver. Like our Unlocking Reading CPD programme, the new statutory reading test for Year 8 and the National Year of Reading, all spring from the strong culture of reading in schools like Beechgrove Primary. Our plans to stretch and challenge all children build on the successes of schools like Heenagate Spencer Academy, where children are supported to dream bigger through visits, mentoring, debate clubs, STEM programmes, AI-based tools. And our AI tutoring programme will bring together teachers, pupils and tech experts to co-create AI tutoring tools that are safe by design and plugged into the curriculum. To halve the disadvantage gap, our white paper draws on what works at schools like Oakdean Primary Academy. The way they use their pupil premium funding is changing. It's changing lives in their schools. And now it will change lives in other schools as well. Together, we can spread that excellence to build a new future. A future in which children grow up together, go to their local school together, achieve and thrive together. That's what's best for children with SEND and for the whole class. The white paper outlines a new system of support as standard, layered to meet different needs. Universal for all, and where needs are greater, targeted support through individual support plans. Then specialist provision too for children who need it. There will always be a role for our wonderful special schools, and they will always be a valued source of expertise for the wider system, right at the centre of our plans for spreading excellence now and into the future. Colleagues, our white paper supports you to set up an inclusion base in your schools for children with complex needs, just like the one at Becontree Primary School that I told you about last year. I told you about the father whose daughter used that inclusion base, and seeing her do well in mainstream school had given him faith that one day she'll go on to live a good life, get a great job, be an active citizen. And now it's about giving that same opportunity to more and more children with SEND. We've got to work together on this because that is the only way we will succeed in our shared mission, especially for guiding young people through tricky transitions, as a young lady called Caris shows. I first met Caris at a round table last July, and I've met her a couple of times since. She lives with a physical disability, but staff at her secondary school understood her needs and she did really well. She then moved on to a big sixth form of 4,000 students, and at first the idea made her very nervous. She was afraid her needs wouldn't be understood. But the college didn't wait for September to get to know her. The study support team met Caris early to talk through her needs, and that meant early preparation and provision could be made and rooms could be adapted well ahead of time. A combination of the right support and teaching excellence meant Caris achieved and thrived at college. She got 4 A stars in her A-levels. Then she got her degree from Oxford, Masters from Liverpool, and now she's studying for her PhD in psychology. High standards and inclusion in action. She's part of our FLAIR group too, and FLAIR brings together children and young people with SEND to share their experiences and to power change. Colleagues, You are at the centre of this change. And you know that change of this scale won't happen overnight. Lasting, meaningful change, the kind that transforms lives. It takes time, it takes dedication, and good old-fashioned hard work. I know that you're no stranger to that, but I am here to support you. I've already told you about the broad support we're bringing, the services that will crisscross childhood. And with this white paper, we're going further. I'm backing you. And at a time when extremely tough decisions have to be made, the Chancellor is backing you as well. £1.6 billion for an inclusive mainstream fund to hardwire inclusion into your schools and nurseries and colleges too. £3.7 billion to develop inclusion bases, improve accessibility and create new special school places. £200 million to train your staff to deliver excellence for children with SEND. And when your pupils need extra help, you'll no longer have to wait for forms to be filled or battles to be won. Experts will be at hand. And in time, you'll be able to draw on a bank of professionals, speech and language therapists, educational psychologists, occupational therapists, backed by £1.8 billion of funding. And this will bolster your budgets over time. Pepe, you recently went on the Today programme and set the record straight. You said that the system had been taking money into the wrong places, into the wrong hands. Funding that only flows after a battle for an AHCP is funding that takes too long to arrive in schools. Instead, just give head teachers the resources up front so that they can support young people sooner rather than later. Well, we've heard you, and that is exactly what we're doing. This is the future, you told listeners. And so to you, Pepe, and to your members here today, and to colleagues across the country, I say let's build that future together, forward together. I see so much excellence to spread in the schools and colleges I visit, in the leaders I meet. I know how valuable you are to our society in one of the most demanding roles in our public services. I want to protect that expertise and to strengthen it further. I want to secure school leadership as a stronghold of high performance. That's why I'm creating the Excellence in Leadership programme, giving leaders the right support. It will include a new evidence-based mentoring framework and more support so that thousands of you can get the space to reflect, build resilience and grow as leaders. And there is so much excellence to celebrate. But I must be straight with you. It's no longer good enough for a school to be excellent alone. High walls in the name of high standards do more harm than good. We need a system in which schools work together to solve problems. We will support you, of course we will, and to protect standards too. But we need a self-improving system, powered by your expertise, your experience, your passion for teaching and learning. A system in which what works is not kept secret, but rather set free in one school after another, growing as it goes. I know ASCL's vision is for all schools working in strong partnerships, and that's my vision too. Over the past 20 years, school trusts have shown that with the right approach, rooted in the communities they serve, they are the most effective way to power collaboration. That's why the white paper signals that all schools will move to joining or forming strong school trusts. For our children not yet benefiting, we'll want to make quick progress, especially in removing the barriers to local authorities setting up trusts. That spirit of collaboration will strengthen everything we do, especially at Key Stage 3, that vital time when too many children spin their wheels. So colleagues, our new Rise Key Stage 3 Alliance is coming, and it will bring together and spread the very best of what schools are doing to give every Year 7 a flying start. Communities of support and learning. That's the future. Forward together. Because colleagues, we are all here for the same reason. Whether you lead a big school trust, you're a teaching assistant in a small local school, whether it's your job to shape the curriculum or to keep the lights on. We all want the same thing, to see every child get the opportunity to succeed, no matter their background, no matter their needs, no matter where they were born or how much their parents earn. Not long ago, I heard about a boy called Joshua who lives down in Brighton. He has autism, but he'd be the first to tell you that that's not what defines him. Joshua struggled at school, but then he went to West Blatchington Primary, part of the Pioneer Academy Trust, and he got the right support. First in the school's inclusion base and then in mainstream classrooms. He's gone from struggling with being at school all day, every day, and now he's doing really well in a mainstream secondary. He's a proud member of the Scouts and he knows he belongs in his community. And what he said about his school really stuck with me. West Blatch changed my life, and for that I am eternally grateful. That's what it's all about. That's what we are fighting for. Colleagues, the chance for change comes rarely. I don't need to tell you how difficult it can be to publish a white paper. There won't be another one along soon. This is it. And now I need you to get behind it, to do right by the children we serve, and to become the generation of leaders who deliver at long last.
So, first of all, I'm going to say a big thank you. Thank you for the shout out. And it's great to know that you're listening, because I'm going to ask you a few things for some more listens as well a bit later. And I'm also going to say thank you because not everybody who's speaking today has offered to do a Q&A. And so we really appreciate the fact that you're doing a Q&A. Couldn't resist that. So, Secretary of State, if I may, you and I began in this role, your role as Secretary of State, me as General Secretary, at about the same time 18 months ago. So I just wanted to spend 10 seconds reflecting on that 18 months. Without sounding like a teacher, I'm going to read here just to help me, and you'll see why I'm reading it. An end to single-phrase judgments, a curriculum assessment review, breakfast clubs, family hubs, children's wellbeing and schools bill, a new Ofsted framework, the Year of Reading, Year 8 reading tests, gender questioning guidance, finally, jointly leading the Child Poverty Task Force and the end to the two-child cap, a post-16 skills white paper, V-levels, stood as deputy leader of the Labour Party.
That one didn't quite work out, though, did it?
Well, I'm going to rush through that one quickly. Introducing the RISE strategy, and then we've got a schools and send white paper. That's quite a lot in 18 months, isn't it? What are your ambitions for the next 18 months?
Well, we need to deliver a lot of those commitments is what we need to do. But no, I am really proud of the work that we've done together in that time. And I hope from the speech I've given today that you understand and your members understand that so much of what we're seeking to do, we know we can only achieve together with the profession. So, we can publish a white paper, and I'm really proud of the white paper and the SEND consultation that we've published. And I think it does present a generational opportunity to change the lives of children across our country, with an understanding that what we need to do isn't just within our schools, but it's around our schools too, and that's a big part of the change that we're seeking to bring. But now we've published all of this, we've done all of this, we need to deliver it. And that delivery can't happen alone in government. It doesn't happen from Westminster, from Whitehall. It happens in the classrooms and in the local services that you and your members support. And my job isn't just to deliver a white paper or to deliver those kinds of changes. It's to create the conditions around schools that make the jobs of school leaders much easier, because I've visit so many schools on a regular basis. I've travelled the length and breadth of the country, and there are kind of common themes that emerge, and one of them is just the pressure that comes to teachers and school leaders because of child poverty, because of disadvantage, because of the problems we face as a country that you alone can't solve. So the challenge for me, and the challenge I think for all of us in the months and years to come, is delivering the change that we've committed to. That's my responsibility, but it's a responsibility I can only do in partnership. And I hope that you see from the approach that I take and that we take, we see that as a joint endeavour. Absolutely. And you mentioned in your speech just that I don't think anyone can accuse you ever of keeping your focus narrow at all. So let's just go forward to perhaps the end of this Parliament. And if you were to reflect back, what do you think you'd want to reflect back on and see as the change that you were able to deliver? So one of the biggest changes within our schools that we are seeking to respond to is the change we need in terms of support for children with SEND and for children from less well-off backgrounds, but aligned with a strong commitment to push students to achieve all that they're capable of. So young people not being held back by their background. We've set a commitment in the white paper that young people born under this Labour government will halve that disadvantage gap. And the way we will do it is, yes, the work that we're doing together in our schools, but it's also through that early family support, it's through the investment in early years education, the Best Start family hubs. The evidence of Sure Start was so clear that if we support children when they're younger, we know what that takes us to, and it means that fewer children arrive at school needing SEND support. The changes around SEND are big and profound, and there is understandable nervousness amongst parents because change can be difficult to navigate, and it's my responsibility to do that carefully, but also the change that we're bringing to schools. And we've talked about how that's got to be done in a way that is phased, in a way that is manageable for school leaders, and that's the commitment we also make in the white paper. But the big achievement I want us to have delivered by the end of the Parliament actually sits outside of schools, and that's our commitment on child poverty. I'm really proud of what the last Labour government did to lift children out of poverty, but our ambition is even bigger than that government. Over 500,000 children by the end of the Parliament lifted out of poverty, the single biggest ever reduction in child poverty in one parliamentary term. That is a huge ambition, a huge commitment, one that we're backing up with investment. It's the right thing to do for our children, but it will also make the jobs of school leaders and teachers much easier. If you've got fewer children coming into school who are struggling, fewer parents who are struggling, fewer children in temporary accommodation, not hungry, where you're having to step in and wash clothes and help kids who are finding life really hard. That is the change that I know you campaign for, that we are delivering, and I think will make the biggest difference to the lives of children in our country.
I think our members would say that we are looking forward to see the benefits of that change, and that all too often they point to those challenges that come from beyond the school gates, that they're having to wrestle with. And so I think we welcome that, and I think we're looking forward to seeing the benefits of that. If you were to reflect, though, on the challenges for our leaders over the course of that 18 months, what do you think the greatest challenges is for them in the rest of this Parliament?
I think it's probably the same challenge that I face, that we face in government. A combination of wanting the pace of change to be faster because we know that it's so important, the pressures that people are under, and the need to go as fast as we can. But then also how you strike that balance in doing so in a way that isn't overwhelming for people working in education, but isn't overwhelming for the parents that you will be supporting day to day, where they do want reassurance about what's happening, particularly around the SEND system. And I know the pressures that so many teachers and leaders have been under in recent years has been serious and challenging. And I'm doing everything I can to make that job easier, to allow you all, as I said in my speech, to focus on what you came into education to deliver, which is brilliant teaching and learning. So what I'd say is, I've always given my commitment to listen to you and your members, to work with the profession, to deliver the change that's needed around support on well-being and much more besides. But there are big constraints. We all know it's a very volatile world, that there is a lot going on. And even in that context, we have taken a decision to prioritise investment in education, in you, in the children that you support. If we could go faster, of course we would. But I think the commitment and the undertaking that we've given demonstrates just how important education is to this government.
So I think that many of us have welcomed the white paper and much of those ambitions that you've shared, both in your speech and just here now. But I think that many of us would be saying to you right now, how do we find the resources? How do we access the investment? Where's that going to come from to help us do exactly what you want us to do? So what can we say on your behalf to the Treasury to make sure that the Treasury are listening to you and understanding how we can help you get that message across to them?
I welcome that support. I do have to say that I think the Treasury have, in a very difficult context, and there are a lot of demands on public spending, have sought to prioritise investment in our schools and in our children, and that is really important. Of course, economic growth is critical to how much further we can go and what we can deliver, but that's not divorced from the conversation that we've just been having about education. We know that if we equip young people for their futures, with the new foundation apprenticeships we're bringing, the new qualifications, the support for our colleges, that will help with economic growth as well. But we are putting extra investment in, as I talked about in my speech, and we'll set out more detail around how that's going to work. I do recognise the pressures that people are under. We are putting more investment in, but alongside that, this is an opportunity to really change the system, especially for children with SEND who've been badly let down. But it's also why we're going to have to take action where public money is not being spent well. And I think that was what you were talking about on the Today programme as well, which is it can't be right that we spend so much money fueling the profits of private equity-backed provision at a time when investment in schools is more needed than ever. So we're going to have to change things, do things differently, focus the money meant for education on education.
Okay. And you've said at the start that you listen. I can verify that you listen, and it's great that we have as positive a relationship as we do. So I'm going to leave you with one more ask that I've heard from our members. And this is less for you to answer about and more just for you to hear, I think. And the ask of our members at the moment is to look at the pressure on our teams and the pressure on leaders that connect wholly and solely around what we would call extreme levels of accountability and an inspection system that doesn't necessarily support leaders in the way they'd want it. And my ask here is that we continue, I know we work together regularly, but we continue to work with Sir Martin, who's just left, but also with your team, because this is important, and this is what's valued, and this is what I think will free up capacity and the motivation and everything that we can do to get behind the white paper. It would certainly be richly welcomed. Can I, on behalf of our members here today and the whole of the delegates here, thank you for your time. Thank you for spending time to do the Q&A, and thank you for the ambition that you've shared on behalf of children and young people in this country. We welcome it, and we're behind you right away.
Thanks. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Exit left.
Thank you. Massive thank you to Bridget and to Pepe for that session. So it is nearly time for break, as I'm sure you would agree.